Welcome to the Commissioner's Report. I'm your host, Jeff Foley, and I'm joined today by Commissioner Neil Combee and Jay Jarvis, Director of Polk County's Roads and Drainage Division. Gentlemen, thank you for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yep,
Appreciate it. So Jay, why don't we start by talking a little bit about what Roads and Drainage does in Polk County? What is the job?
Well, as the title says for the division, Roads and Drainage deals with the county's road system and drainage system, and we're responsible for the maintenance and doing improvements to that system, or those systems, as needed to keep them functional and operating, and then making improvements to them to make them function better, such as widening roads and doing intersection improvements and those types of things.
Now, Commissioner Combee, I know sitting on the board, you are very closely involved with everything that happens. What sort of challenges does Jay's division face given the growth and the speed of the growth in Polk County?
Well, I think that drainage has always been a big issue for Polk County. We have a lot of lower land and flatter ground. It's not so much of an issue on the ridge and in the highlands, but when you start getting into flatter areas, you know, people really rely on existing drainage ditches, some of them historical, probably back to the beginning of the county almost, back into the 1800s when it started constructing some canals and ditches in the county. But the limitation, the problem that Jay have, it's one of resources. It's one of having the people and the money and the equipment to really, you know, make sure that we've got a routine maintenance program going. And it's really, and I think you even mentioned in the board meeting today that people have a routine, but they get out of the routine because sometimes you've got pressing matters and little fires to go put out, so you get thrown off schedule. Talking about APV and the Point Sienna, our mowing program over there. So it's you know, limited by manpower, by equipment, and that challenge will be with us, you know, in perpetuity, I think.
And Jay, you've got probably two significant challenges, one being the growth, 90 people a day moving to the county, and then I believe it's over 2,000 miles of roads that you maintain?
Yeah, it's about 2,600 miles of centerline miles of roadway that we maintain.
How hard is it to stay staffed well enough to maintain?
It's pretty difficult. We utilize a lot of different opportunities, techniques from, you know, in-house personnel. We have 6 maintenance units around the county, throughout the county. Those are the in-house staff that do some more of the routine type maintenance activities, such as cleaning ditches and pipes and potholes and those types of things. And then we have contracts to perform other more laborious activities like pavement, resurfacing, replacing drainage pipes and guardrail, building sidewalks, those types of things that, you know, are kind of our responsibility. So there's a lot of things, and even we have in-house staff. We have our own sign manufacturing group that manufactures all the county signs, and then basically installing those, maintaining those signs, and the same things with signals. I mean, as we grow, more traffic, more areas, intersections need to be upgraded, and so now you're going from 4-way stops to signalized intersections, and or, you know, the new highlight thing is roundabouts as well. So I mean, there's opportunities, but like Commissioner Combee said, you know, it still comes down to manpower, funding, you know, those types of things. So you really have to look at priorities and having those discussions with the board and saying, okay, you know, we have a long list of things that, you know, we would love to do, but, you know, we have to prioritize that as we move through.
I think, well, and Jay talks about the sign shop, and you know, we've had a sign shop, I don't know, for a long time, as far as I can remember. But you know, some are critical, and when they get knocked down, and they do, because I have to call him or Mr. Beasley from time to time when somebody takes out a stop sign, they've got to go back up quickly. Especially, you know, if you drive it every day, you know you're supposed to stop here, but somebody traveling through that doesn't live in the area or nearby, they don't know to stop if there's not a stop sign there. So it's important that we have somebody really, I guess it's 24/7, 365 when you look at that, folks who are on call to respond quickly to get those signs back up, just for the safety of the motoring public.
I would guess that it's a pretty good idea to have stuff like that in-house, so you're not relying on a third party and facing delays, et cetera.
Yeah.
Jay, how are you guys using technology to benefit the residents?
We've spent the last last decade probably, trying to improve what we refer to as our asset management, kind of how we track things. Now that goes all the way from payment management. That was our initial thing, was basically looking at different techniques for payment management. It used to be the county spent all their funds doing the worst roads first, doing what we call mill and fill, basically go in mill, resurface the road, and that was pretty much it. That's what we spent all our funds doing, trying to keep the roads up best we could. Over the last decade, this pavement preservation concept has kind of been developed, where you look at different techniques to try to extend the life of a road, even starting with, maybe a year or two after you've just paved a roadway, coming in and doing what they call rejuvenation on the roadway, putting on thin lifts, those types of things to keep the life of the roadway extended. And so that's what that program does for us. It basically takes data, deterioration rates of roadways, conditions of the roadways, and takes our funding, which we put about $18 million a year towards resurfacing, and basically takes all that information and tells us this is where the program is saying. Now we use common sense relative to that, because it's all by segment. So you may have a bunch of segments spread out all over the place. It may not make sense to do one area. You may want to combine some areas and those types of things, but that's what that does. And for every year during the budget process, we basically have developed what we're going to do and implement that in the upcoming year in the budget.
So you've got in your vehicles equipment that reads the condition of the roads and transmits it, and you can start to make decisions based off of that?
We have some video detection type equipment that we utilize. When we kind of got into this, there was a big reorganization, and one of the things that we did have is we had some technician type people, construction testing inspectors, technicians. So we actually have our in-house staff physically going out and doing that. Now they do it visually, and then they also have recording devices that can also record the condition, and we kind of compare those two to kind of come up with the best pavement condition that we can.
So what's on the horizon for roads and drainage?
Well, we've all heard the old saying, we need to work smarter, not harder. And I was sitting here thinking about an example, some analogy, but I read one time about the Erie Canal, and I think it was dug with shovels and men. And to think about that, it's really mind-boggling. But today, what I'm sure Jay and others share this belief with me that when we can, we need to use modern equipment. I mean, if there's something better out there that will replace 10 guys on a shovel, then we need to get that, because it's hard to find people that really like to get on the end of a shovel these days, especially with all the different types of equipment that's out there. So I think that whether it's using his software that he's talking about for the pavement management, and a lot of that I'm sure is manually, you input numbers, and then
Yes,
I hate to say artificial intelligence, because it probably isn't, but it may be right on the edge of artificial intelligence that runs those numbers and say you need to look here, here, and here. We need to make sure that we have the best equipment we can possibly afford to reduce our manpower costs, to improve the time in getting a job completed. And because, like I say, the limited resources is going to be a problem. That's never going to go away. We'll never have enough money to go out and in a 12-month period do routine maintenance on every drainage system out there. And again, a lot of people rely on them. And unfortunately, we find that people sometimes, if they get tired of it, they fill in, and it takes a while to discover that they've placed fill material, dirt, some kind of impediment, or blocked it in some way. So that's always a constant battle to try to make sure that you prevent that from happening, because while it may not hurt them, it may be hurting people upstream.
Sounds like you'd like to use every tool we have in the toolbox to keep our residents safe and keep money in their pockets when you can.
Exactly.
Jay, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think one of the things that the citizens need to be aware, we don't have people out looking at all this stuff all the time. It's more We are very much citizen driven as far as reporting issues that we have. Relative, like Commissioner Combee, stop signs. That's very important. That's a majority of what those people who are working 24/7 are looking at, is those specific, almost emergency type situations that they need to be addressed immediately. If a speed limit sign's down or those types of things, information signs, those may not need to be addressed immediately. But everything we do is basically, to some point, the best way is if you see something, let us know. And we'll definitely take a look at it and see if
we actually even have a number, like I think
there's
weekend number after hours. I don't know it off the top of my head.
Either.
We'll grab it and put it on the screen.
That's one thing, that we should put on the screen, and we probably should put it on our website somewhere, in bold print, that here, if something happens on Saturday at 2 o'clock, here's the number to call, and then they can dispatch the appropriate folks.
Well, gentlemen, I appreciate you taking the time to be here. Anything you want to add to the conversation before we wrap up?
Nope. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Jay, for coming.
Awesome. And I think it's just, we continue to work on things as far as projects and things like that, and so we know there's issues, and we're working to try to address them the best we can.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for checking out the Commissioner's Report. I'm your host, Jeff Foley, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you for watching. Please make sure to subscribe and like our social media.